The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices. Central Arkansas, surrounding areas, and the nation. Get ready. Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855-525-5683. So here's your host, David W. Coleman.
All right, I'm Dave W. Coleman. Welcome back to Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices. We're taking a bit of sabbatical, purposely and not purposely, but we'll start doing more and more shows as we head into the end of the year. Of course, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We're, 7 days outside of the election. Trump won. Today we're going to talk a little bit about why Kamala Harris lost. It's not going to make you all happy. It's not going to change the results, but we're going to talk about it because I think we need to talk about it, okay? Part of that was she ignored men, okay? Let's be honest about that. We're going to get into that today as well. We're also going to talk a little bit about white genetic annihilation. We're going to reference the ISIS papers written by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, where she and Neely Fuller talked about a lot about white genetic annihilation and quote-unquote penis envy, okay? So we'll get into that today because all of that contributed to Kamala Harris's loss in the election. We're also going to look at some of the numbers. So we're going to give you some numbers on the breakdown on why, who fourth out there, who lost, who voted for who didn't vote for who. And I'm going to tell you, black women are upset. Y'all ought to be. Okay, the Black Fact today, as a matter of fact, is going to talk a little bit about how white women contributed to or totally disrespected her slaves. Did you know that 40% of slave owners were white women? Ooh, how did that contribute to how they voted in this past election? I told you, we're going to break it down for you today. Oh, Project 2025. It's coming your way. Are you ready? Okay? Those of you that doesn't think, and really when we look at these numbers about who voted for who, these Latinos, y'all about to get a rude awakening, bro. I'm going to tell you, about to get a rude awakening. All right? Because there's a reason why they want all this to happen. No one talked about it. As we went through the election cycle and all the pundits was on all of the television shows, no one talked about this particular aspect of why white people were doing what they were doing. Okay? They were willing to sacrifice white women on the birthing table to push through this agenda. No one even asked the underlying question that was right there before our eyes. We're going to talk about that today. Okay? We're going to talk about that today. It's Black Focus Radio. You all know how we do it. Before we can do anything, we got to have Black Facts. And as I told you, Black Facts today deals with how white women contributed to slavery and some of its horrors. Because I think it's appropriate to look at history, because for some reason or another, we in the black community refuse to look at history. Because history will determine what an individual will do. They do it when you go and buy a car, they look at your credit record, right? That's a history. That's a suggestion on whether or not you will pay your bills. But we won't look at the history of other people. But in this Black Fact, you're going to learn a lot. I hope you enjoy it. Let's do Black Facts right now.
Dynamic Black Facts. Our culture, our history, our people. White women were not passive bystanders to the slave economy. They were co-conspirators. They bought, sold, and owned slaves. In fact, about 40% of the slave owners were white women. The more slaves a woman had, the more power she held. Parents gave their daughters more enslaved people than land. So, to a white Southern woman, owning slaves became tied to her very identity. This is the true story of how white women treated their black slaves. Slavery in the U.S. lasted for more than 400 years, and in that time, the system shaped generations and generations of people, a system that created this psychological distortion. White people dominated the country. They created a violent and oppressive system to terrorize the black community. They used lynchings, beatings, and savage treatment to torment the masses. Even when there wasn't violence, there was segregation. Communities, housing, and the criminal justice system used discriminatory policies. Racism pervaded all aspects of American society. White families gained huge amounts of material benefits and privileges from this racial hierarchy. Before the Civil War, in the South, American white women couldn't vote. When they got married, the husband became the head of the household, and the woman was the heart of the home. Women were considered the property of their husbands. Their mobility and freedom were severely limited. For example, if a woman wanted to travel, she would need a male chaperone. The abuse was considered a normal way to control a woman. They were expected to remain cheerful, pleasant, obedient, and faithful, while their husbands had affairs and female slaves. These women knew that the mixed-race slave children on their properties were their husband's offspring. That's why many white women wanted freedom of their own, power to turn the narrative. That's where slavery came into play. Most people know that George Washington had slaves. They took care of his Mount Vernon home, but very few people know that Martha, his wife, was the one who drastically increased the slave population there. When the couple got married in 1759, George owned about 18 slaves, but Martha owned 84. The high number of people Martha owned might be unusual, but the fact that she had black slaves is not. She and many other white women were violent and active participants in the slave trade. Having many enslaved people increased a woman's chances of finding a good husband. After marriage, white women went to court to keep legal ownership over their slaves, and in many cases, they won. That's because, for women, slavery was their freedom. In the past, historians believed that white women didn't have a significant role in slavery. They based their conclusions on the writings of a small group of white women from the South. However, Jones Rogers, an associate professor of history at the University of California, Berkeley, used a different source: interviews with black people, real evidence that gave her a better look at what happened during the time of slavery.
Enslaved all our lives, and mother was a slave, sister was a slave, father was a slave.
They know nothing about reading right. All that I know, they teach you to mind your master and your mistress.
These interviews were part of the Federal Writers Project, a branch of the Works Progress Administration. The truth is, white girls were taught how to become slave owners at a very young age. When they were just 9 months old, they grew up in a world that showed them how to control, own, and master enslaved people.
Other people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. They want to sleep on the floor. Pat it here, pat it down. Just like a lot of wild people, we didn't know nothing. Didn't like to look in no book.
Many of their family members, even their female cousins, friends, mothers, and grandmothers, were teaching these young women how the world works. They have this property, and once they get married, this property will belong to their husband, unless they are willing to do something about it. And if that husband is a loser, so are you. So, young girls were trained to make sure that whatever happened in their lives, they would need to ensure their success. When a white woman was old enough to have slaves, she could use her social standing to uphold and sustain that power. She could dictate the lives of those she owned, and could verbally or brutally exploit her servants. What many people today may not realize is that Southern households did their best to reproduce slave society. They wanted more servants at a lower cost. White women born during these periods, whether boys or girls, would watch their parents exert dominion over their black servants. They were taught to mimic their behaviors. They were ready, smart, calculated. They knew exactly what they were doing. The book, They Were Her Property, gives us clear examples of how life back then actually looked like. The first chapter starts with Lizzie Anna Burwell, a 3-year-old who demands her father cut the ears of a black servant and get her a new maid from Clarksville. Her father would then give the girl more slaves as gifts, so that they would become her property. The book reveals how women in the antebellum South could actively possess property, and in turn, lay claim to owning black servants. Legally married women were not recognized as property owners due to the coverture doctrine. This meant that a married couple was seen as having one legal identity, belonging to the husband. In Stephanie McCurry's works, Women's War and Confederate Reckoning, the coverture mirrored the private authority slaveholders held over black servants. Women had limited legal and political standing, and any attempts they made in this regard were met with significant resistance. Jones Rogers acknowledged that coverture often restricted married white women, but she also explained that Southern families frequently bypassed or overlooked these restrictions. Families could transfer property to daughters or other female relatives under the condition that it would remain separate from marital assets. Southern women could, and did, create what we now refer to as prenuptial agreements, or documents like deeds of trust, deeds of gift, and wills, which granted the wife control over all the property she already possessed or would acquire during her marriage. In Louisiana, women could ask the court to establish separate marital estates if their husbands exhibited imprudent financial management. For example, if their husband failed to budget their expenses, accumulated debt, spent too much, etc. In other words, there were two distinct systems that coexisted, a genuine patriarchy alongside an actual framework of legal and financial influence held by white women. There was a common misconception that white women were sheltered and delicate. They kept the household clean of all the impurities of the outside world. But that is absolutely not true. Slave traders, travelers, merchants, city officials, and former black slaves all attested to the presence of white women in 19th century slave markets. When slavery was at its peak, women also sold and bought black servants from the comfort of their own homes, many times within local social networks. Because of their widespread influence, white women created a completely different market of enslaved wet nurses. Now, you might be wondering why these white women felt the need to tear black women from their families to nurse their children. One actual report said that white women who were constantly having babies felt like a slave in their own homes. Black women could ease that burden, so it was easier to buy a wet nurse who would take care of such responsibilities. Depending on her financial status, the white woman could hire, borrow, or purchase an enslaved wet nurse. This gave white women the power to pursue social events while someone else took care of their newborn. Some, but not all, white women were incredibly brutal to their enslaved. They were so violent that their husbands had to restrain them. For example, a wealthy white woman often invested in enslaved men and women so that they would be forced to reproduce and give her more slaves. Historical records kept track of a woman called Henrietta Butler who was forced to have sex with enslaved black men to have a child. She was then forced to nurse her mistress's child, but many other women suffered a similar fate. Masters often raped their enslaved servants to make sure they had an ample supply of wet nurses. White women from affluent households also ran brothels, especially the women who had many male and female slaves. By 1860, nearly half of all African slaves in the Americas were in the United States. That was about 4 to 6 million people. Based on reports from the 1860 census, 393,973 white individuals owned 3,950,528 black individuals. Only about 1.5% of the white population in the US owned slaves. It's been over 150 years since slavery legally ended in 1865, but the true trauma wasn't just the experience of slavery, but also the aftermath, when hopes for equality and acceptance were crushed in the 1880 to 1890s due to a shift in beliefs about blacks and whites. When the Civil War came, and it was time to free the enslaved, many white women retaliated. Female slave owners resisted the change by letting the Union authorities know they were loyal. There were many cases where female slave owners sought compensation when the American government abolished slavery in the District of Columbia. Others wanted to keep their property by any means necessary. They went as far as to move their enslaved people away from the areas affected by the war, in a practice known as refugeeing. When the Civil War ended, many white women negotiated labor conditions with freed black people. They tried to maintain control over the young African Americans by taking their children as apprentices. Apprenticeship was another form of labor. Although it was better than complete slavery, it was still not freedom. Ex-slaves were expected to work under the same master or mistress, often for meager wages and a specific time set. Many apprentices worked for the same person that used to be their mistress, and it was not that better than the life they had before. W.E.B. Du Bois, an American sociologist, wrote something about it. He said a slave went free, stood for a brief moment in the sun, then moved back again towards slavery. This brief moment in the sun was when black communities, along with support from the Freedmen's Bureau, started establishing schools, social assistance, and some legal protections. However, this progress was largely undermined by the white Southern elite. That includes white women. They swiftly passed laws known as the Black Codes. Their goal was simple: reintroduce obligations, burdens, and restrictions that would mimic slavery. The Black Codes were designed to take away the voting rights of black people. They were meant to stop them from becoming juries or state militias. Instead, the white people would create this complex system where freed black people could still be controlled. White men and women put in place contract and vagrancy laws. They led to a popular peonage labor system. Peonage is a type of involuntary servitude based on claimed debt. By 1915, at least 6 former slaveholding states had laws that made it possible to force black people to work against their will. For example, if a black person was found guilty of vagrancy, they were forced to work in the convict lease system. This system brought in substantial profits for the wealthy white women and men who both sold and bought the labor of those who were convicted. Experts found a memoir of a white woman called Rebecca Felton. Take a look at this colorized interview from 1929. Felton was a former slave owner who grew up during the Civil War.
I went to Washington 50 years and a little more ago. I saw all the people around there and been with the president. I was one of the board of lady managers for the Chicago Exposition, and I served my full time in Chicago.
In her memoir, she talked about the corruption in Georgia's legal system. She mentioned that there were cases where judges were elected by a dominant faction. During this time, a black person could be sentenced to hard labor for 10 years for stealing just 3 eggs or a bowl of milk. She also noted that a 15-year-old black girl in Atlanta got a 5-year penitentiary for taking 50 cents from another black child. The dominant faction made a huge amount of money, about $500,000 a year, from the convict leasing system, and judges who sent strong black people to prison had much better chances of being elected. But control wouldn't have been possible without the threat of violence. That's where groups like the Ku Klux Klan came into play. They intimidated, brutalized, and murdered black people across the nation. The Women's KKK was a separate but affiliated racist group of white Protestant women. They got more members through empowerment feminism. The first version of the KKK emerged in Pulaski, Tennessee, after the Civil War. It was established by men who were upset about the newly liberated black population. They were angry about their political rights and sought purpose, thrill, and a socially accepted platform where they could be violent. These early KKK members wanted something new, but they wanted to keep it under a veil of secrecy, and they did just that. The KKK created a strict organization with many ceremonies that would go perfectly with their hateful, anti-Reconstruction goals. During the starting days of the Klan, women didn't actively participate, but they did sew their husbands' and family members' clothes for the ceremonies. Women also had a symbolic role to play. One of the goals of these extremists, as they saw it, was to shield pure and innocent women from the frightening black people who were now a threat. Especially in its early years, the male Klan held 2 conflicting views of femininity and womanhood. One was a fantasy, and the other was a concession to real people. In their minds, white Protestant women were pure, virtuous beings whose main purpose was to support and serve men. In return, men would safeguard these vulnerable ladies from those sexually aggressive black men. In the second phase of the Klan came the Women's KKK. This was a related but separate group specifically for white Protestant women. The early days of the WKKK were marked by conflicts within the Klan itself. One leader of the male Klan started a group called the Camellias. It focused on women and advocated for white supremacy so that he could increase his own influence. Another leader joined forces with a secretive women's society called the Queens of the Golden Mask. Eventually, the Golden Mask group prevailed and became the WKKK. It was the first authorized in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1923. At its height, the WKKK had branches in every state, especially in Arkansas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana. Much like the male KKK, the WKKK had a structured system. Interestingly, the system had similar aspects to the Roman Catholic hierarchy. There were positions like the Imperial Commander, Claylifts, Clocards, Cligraps, Claybees, along with the Klexter Chlorogos. People in these positions were responsible for enforcing Klan rules. They recruited members, collected dues, organized events, and so on. But all of these roles and activities were influenced by racism. nationalism, fear of outsiders, and a determination to protect the family. In contrast to their male counterparts, the WKKK didn't often participate in lynching or other violent acts, aside from a 1924 incident where members paraded with clubs. Because of this absence of physical violence, many historians tend to see WKKK members, as well as women in racist movements in general, as obscure and relatively unimportant figures. They just see them as people who worked in the background of their men. But the fact is, the women KKK was very powerful. They were excellent manipulators. They used their social standing to further improve their agendas. Many of these members had organized social clubs before, so it was super easy for them to spread the word and destroy the reputations of political candidates or anyone else they deemed unworthy. These women tried to remove Catholic public school teachers, organized boycotts of businesses, and supported candidates who were aligned with the Klan. They increased their influence by providing food baskets to needy families. They also arranged events like weddings, funerals, speeches, parades, christenings, carnivals, and lectures. By organizing both ceremonial and social activities, these women integrated the Klan and its beliefs into the everyday life of American society. In their minds, all the good people were a part of the Klan. These groups were unsettling precisely because they seamlessly blended with small towns in America. WKKK didn't attract women because it was something new or unusual. No, it was popular because it aligned naturally with the lives of white Protestant Americans and their values and traditions. Many of these women viewed the Klan as a social club, an opportunity to have a good time with friends. But their shared commitment to racism and xenophobia was terrifying. Many of these white women were conservatives to the core. They were dedicated to the cause and had power within their communities. Some of these women were also active outside their homes. Lulu Markwell, for example, was the first national leader of the WKKK. She worked for women's suffrage in Indiana and other states. Daisy Douglas Barr led the Klan, but was also an esteemed Quaker preacher. This means that they had a huge impact on a much broader scale. As you can see, white women were not bystanders when it came to slavery and the slave trade. They were very much involved in the system as their male counterparts. The only thing is that many of these women were believed to be innocent and pure, while in fact, they had their own agendas and were proud to own slaves. They benefited from the slave market and wanted to expand their own riches. After all, they too were born in a system that exploited black people. This system shaped their morals, ethics, and values, creating wide-scale oppression and brutality.
Keep listening to Black Focus Radio for more dynamic Black facts, our culture, our history, our people on joynetradio.com.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that Black fact. I thought that particular Black fact would set the stage of what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to look at some numbers and stuff. We're going to pull all of that up here in just a moment as it relates to who voted for who. But the importance is that a lot of black women are really upset about how white women betrayed them. Let's just be honest about that when it comes to voting. So we'll get into all of that and more here in just a moment. We'll take a break. You're listening to Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices on joynetradio.com.
Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Get great deals on rubs, sauces, snacks, and the best value. Coleman's Dynamic Gift Boxes pack with rib rubs, rib nuts, rib juice, pepper juice, rib dust, and fry dust. Get your choice of hot and spicy, original, and scorching flavors. Here's the secret. The gift box is the best value. Sign up for the Rib Rub Nation newsletter and get even more great discounts at ribrub@gmail.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That is ribrub.com. Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That's ribrub.com.
Hi, I'm David W. Coleman, host of Black Focus Radio and the Weekly Sports Magazine. We here at joynetradio.com would like to thank you for all the love and support you've given us. Our goal is to keep you inspired and informed daily with quality programming from gospel music, news, talk, and sports. Log on to joynetradio.com for the program lineup, and while there, be sure to make a donation. Then download our app and carry us anywhere in the world. Please continue to spread the word word about joinnetradio.com. And if you are an entrepreneur or have an upcoming event or you'd like to start a show, let the professional writers and producers here at joinnetradio.com help you get the word out. Call me at 615-554-0568 for more details. In the meantime, stay informed and inspired daily right here on joinnetradio.com.
Listen!
Did you miss Dr. Ernest Gill from UT San Antonio?
When you're making $455 million off these student athletes and all you can come up with is $5,000, John Calipari makes $8 million a year, and his players are going to get $5,000 a year. The majority of these teams were white men and white males and females. Would this be happening? And I would say no, because their families wouldn't let it happen. But we're letting our kids get pimped.
Join the weekly sports magazine every Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. on joinnetradio.com.
Welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with me if you'd like to join the show. Hit me up at blackfocusradio@gmail.com. Send me an email. You can. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's where you can catch the old shows, catch the new shows, and send me information as well. Don't forget to support our sponsors. Black Focus Radio right now. Black Friday is going on with ribrub.com. Join and get the newsletter for the Rib Rub Nation, and we'll send you some discounts for this holiday season. Okay? So do that. Just send me an email at ribrub@gmail.com, and I'll get you a copy of the newsletter. All right. So after all of that is out of the way. So, like I said, today is Monday, and tomorrow will make a week. Everybody is coming to grips with the fact that Donald Trump, a 34-time convicted felon, an adulterer, just a horrible, horrible individual, is once again the president of the United States. And needless to say, I'm not happy about it. A lot of people aren't happy about it, but I like to say I did my due diligence to try to make sure I got the word out on why it was important to vote against Donald Trump. Now, if we are to believe what has been proffered to the nation prior to his election, is that Project 2025 is on the agenda. And one of the things that we're going to try to do over the next few days is tell you what you voted for. Now, if you go out to my website, not my website, but if you go out to my Facebook wall, there is a link to a graphic novel type of what Project 2025 will do. And we're going to go through that, all right? But there's going to be more police brutality. I'm just going to tell you right now, I told y'all years ago, I'm done marching. I'm not marching anymore. Coming up later on in the show, as we do every show, is we're going to do what we must do. Because more importantly now, we must do something. Okay? You didn't go out to vote. Some of y'all didn't vote. Some of y'all voted for the wrong people. Some of y'all are just lost. Our black people are just lost. So what are we going to do? You're going to sit around and cry in your milk? Or you're going to get off your asses and do something? That's the question right now. Don't give me this mess about Kamala Harris and why she lost and nobody wanted to elect a woman and this, that, and other. It's a lot deeper than that. It's a lot deeper than that. And we're going to try to delve into some of that today. Okay? So let's kind of just start off with, let's look at I'll tell you what, let's do this first. Let me tell you why I think one of the reasons she lost. Okay? And let's be clear, I voted for Kamala Harris and tried to get everybody that I know to vote for Kamala Harris. I just didn't want that person back in the White House to represent me. And if what he said he's going to do is going to basically dismantle this country, here we go. You asked for it, and in a weird kind of way, I'm kind of glad this is going to happen because it's going to make a lot of people pay attention. Okay? So we'll see how it goes. But let me start off by simply saying this. About a month ago, I purchased a Netflix subscription. And I purchased a Netflix subscription because I wanted to catch some things that was going to be happening on Netflix and so on and so forth. And in having that subscription, I am privy to other movies that I can go and look at. Obviously, you all know I don't have to describe to you what Netflix is. One of the things that I like as far as movies, genres, I like science fiction and I like action flicks. I don't particularly care for dramas. Depends on the drama, okay? One thing I noticed on Netflix is that all of the action flicks are devoid of male characters. Even some of the science fiction is devoid of male lead characters. One of the ones that I watched that I thoroughly enjoyed was Rebel Moon. Parts 1 and 2. I'm going to watch it again. But the lead character was a woman. And now you probably say, well, Dave, what difference does that make? Well, I guess it really doesn't. But when you look at that subscription and you look at those lead characters of the newer movies and all of them, or at least 80-90% of them are women, what are happening to the male leads? Now, here's what bothers me about those, because those action movies have women beating up men. I'm going to tell you how this applies to Kamala Harris here in a moment. It's unrealistic. Now, women will argue, at least some will argue, well, a man beating up all those men is unrealistic too. Well, that's true if you want to look at it from that standpoint. But it becomes even more far-fetched when there's a 5'4" woman beating up men that are 6'4" and 6'5". That dog just don't hunt for me. Maybe for you. Now, I think Kamala Harris lost because of a backlash of anti-male is it misandry is what they call it from a woman's point of view? Think about this from this perspective. Can you name one thing Kamala Harris said that she would specifically do for men? Can you name one thing? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not fooled. I know that there are some men who are not going to vote for Kamala Harris, period, because she was a woman. Let's just be real. That's a fact. Whether they be black, white, Hispanic, Asian. There are still men who think that women can't lead. Okay? But specifically speaking, Kamala Harris ran a campaign that basically ignored a man's perspective on how he lives. You just assume that they were going to vote for her because they were your sisters, your aunts, your nieces, your daughters. Heard that a lot. But nothing that she said or did addressed a male need. Because I know y'all don't know it or y'all ignore it, that men have needs too. There are things that we are concerned about. Hey, I was thrilled to hear about the fact that she was going to give $20,000 to start up businesses. I was thrilled about that. I was going to apply. But that's any business. That doesn't really address male needs. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't. So that's part of why she lost. Here's one thing that I would ask throughout the campaign. First of all, what are male reproductive rights? Whether we said anything about it, whether men said anything about it, that kind of stuck in our craw. How can you say a woman has reproductive rights, but a male does not? Her husband does not. The man responsible for, or 50% responsible for that child being here, and he has no rights to it? That bothered me. And I know it bothered a lot of men too. They may not have said anything, but it did. I sent texts to various news outlets to ask Kamala Harris, what are male reproductive rights? All we heard was abortion, abortion, abortion. It's our right, it's our body. But see, here's the only right, if you say that's a right, and I'm not arguing that one way or the other, but if it is a right, and let's say it is a right based on what you say, it is the only right that has been afforded to you where you are only 50% in possession of that right. Did you get that? Do you understand what I'm saying here? You are only 50% of ownership of that right. Now you're asking, well, where does the other 50% go? It goes to the father of that fetus, the male that Kamala Harris basically ignored. Had Kamala Harris come out and said one thing, I'm going to make sure, because we're concerned about our children, we're concerned about fathers and mothers, but we're going to make sure that before a child gets public assistance, a DNA test must be served, must be completed. You know how many men would have jumped on board with her? See, you didn't even care about fathers. You didn't even care about male reproductive rights. So you ran on this abortion thing. Contrary to popular belief, is men want their children more so than the women do, but men know that it's up to her based on her reproductive rights to decide whether or not she's going to keep that child. I will tell you that I am a victim, and I say I am a victim of abortion. Twice. In which I wanted the child, but the woman did not. I'm just going to be real with you. So what Kamala Harris ran into, more so than anything else, was men who felt like their needs, their wants, their desires were ignored. Period. End of story. When you look at the numbers, 55% of the voters were male. They voted for Kamala Harris, 42, Donald Trump, 55. That's a 13-point gap right there. When you look at women, 53% women, Kamala Harris, 45% for Donald Trump. But when you really look down at the numbers by sex, white men voted for Donald Trump 60%, white women voted for Donald Trump 53%. When we come back, we're going to go through this whole chart in this next segment, because I think you all need to understand. A lot of people are saying, well, the Democrat Party is going to have to do this. Well, I don't think the Democratic Party has to do much of anything. I think they need to just better understand the electorate. Latino men is the one that really boggled my mind. We're going to talk about those numbers as well. But I ask you the question. What specifically did Kamala Harris say she would do to help men? Kamala Harris ran as a black woman. What did Kamala Harris say that she would specifically do for black men? Hello? Now, not many black men voted for Donald Trump, but there were a few that trickled over there. What did she say she would vote for? What would she say? Look, here's the thing. I know my brothers, and look, black men are some stubborn people. And when you cross them, I think they're still having, what do they call it? They're having problems with Obama. Because Obama didn't do much for black men himself. He was quick to chastise black men. You even saw that on the campaign trail. They literally were chastising black men that if you don't vote, this is what, and they were right. But the way they were presenting their message was not conducive to what black men wanted to hear. Because see, black men, I've been listening to a lot of these black women who are upset. And they say, oh, black women are the ones who are this, that, and other. No, black men are last in every category. Black women are right ahead of them, but we're last. You see, we're both in the same boat. What has happened is that we've been fractured. Think about, as we went through this last 3 to 4 months of the election, what was on the mind of more black people? Was it the election? Don't say it was the economy, because that's a damn lie. You know what was on the minds of a lot of black people? Sean Puffy Combs. All over the internet. All over Facebook. All over social media. I've seen the enemy, and it is we. That's the problem. Black people simply were tuned out. On the other hand, what I'm not going to do is put up with people chastising black men because they didn't turn out in the numbers that they could have. You didn't address their issues. And I think what is going on is black men are tired of you not addressing their issues. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit about how upset black women are with white women. At the beginning of the next segment, at the top of the hour, we're going to give you the specifics of why Donald Trump won. It's something we've been talking about on this show for years. What I'm addressing this hour is just some of the mistakes and hiccups that the Harris campaign made. But I'm going to be totally honest with you, at the end of the day, it wouldn't have made a difference. There's an underlying current in this country, and it's going to continue, and it's going to exacerbate itself. Something you all aren't paying attention to. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But when we come back, we're going to look more at the numbers, because I think the numbers, the exit polling is important for us to understand why Kamala Harris lost. And we're also going to talk a little bit about white women. Okay? Because black women, they done got tired of y'all. Back in a moment. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices on joynetradio.com.
Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Get great deals on rubs, sauces, snacks, and the best value. Coleman's Dynamic Gift Boxes packed with rib rubs, rib nuts, rib juice, pepper juice, rib dust, and fry dust. Get your choice of hot and spicy, original, and scorching flavors. Here's the secret. The gift box is the best value. Sign up for the Rib Rub Nation newsletter and get even more great discounts at ribrub@gmail.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That is ribrub.com. Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That's ribrub.com.
Hi, I'm David W. Coleman, host of Black Focus Radio and the Weekly Sports Magazine. We here at JoinedRadio.com would like to thank you for all the love and support you've given us. Our goal is to keep you inspired and informed daily with quality programming from gospel music, news, talk, and sports. Log on to JoinedRadio.com for the program lineup, and while there, be sure to make a donation. Then download our app and carry us anywhere in the world. Please continue to spread the word about JoinedRadio.com. And if you are an entrepreneur or have an upcoming event or you'd like to start a show, let the professional writers and producers here at JoinedRadio.com help you get the word out. Call me at 615-554-0568 for more details. In the meantime, stay informed and inspired daily right here on JoinedRadio.com.
Listen!
Did you miss Dr. Ernest Gill from UT San Antonio?
When you're making $455 million off these student athletes, and all you can come up with is $5,000, John Calipari makes $8 million a year, and his players are going to get $5,000 a year. The majority of these teams were white men and white males and females. Would this be happening? And I would say no, because their families wouldn't let it happen. But we're letting our kids get pimped.
Join the Weekly Sports Magazine every Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. on JoinedRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. 855-525-5683 is the number. That's how you get in touch with us if you'd like to join the show. We're talking about the results of the election and where we're headed. Of course, as I told you last segment, I wanted to talk a little bit about the numbers because the numbers are important. Very important when we deal with this situation. And when you look at the overall stats, and you can see this on the screen, whites voted for total number of people who voted who were white was 71% of the electorate. Looks like 57% of that went to Donald Trump, 41% to Kamala Harris. As far as black, 85% went to Kamala, 13% went to Donald Trump. Hispanic, 52%, 46%. That's an interesting number, considering the fact that Donald Trump is talking about deporting many Hispanics. Let's see who has Asian, 54% to Harris, 39% to Trump, and other 42, 54. Okay. Now, as far as race, let's say sex by race. White men voted for Kamala Harris, 37%, Donald Trump, 60%. White women, 45% Kamala Harris, and 53% Donald Trump. Black men, 77 to 21, which was a little high. I guess you've got to go back and look at what the numbers were and the number of people that voted during that time period last time. Black women, 91.7. Latino men, 43.55. Latino women, 60.38. Okay. Here's another interesting. In what age group? 45 to 64. 44 Kamala, 54 Donald Trump. 65 and over. 40. It was a split 49-49. I find that interesting. Younger people, age 18 to 29, 54% Kamala, 43% of Donald Trump. But I want to go back to this number right here. And you can probably say, well, I want to go back to two numbers. White women, 45% Kamala, 53% Donald Trump. Latino women, 60% Kamala, 38% Donald Trump. Now, why is that important? Because what we were led to believe, and certainly what black women were led to believe, is that they had a coalition with white women and other women of color. Clearly, as the numbers show, that was not the case. Based on what we've seen, is that white women basically lied to black women. Look, again, this is why I started off with that piece about how white women treated their slaves. Because white women can be diabolical. And what we've seen is the numbers don't lie. And we saw that in 16 when Trump won. We saw it again in 20, although Trump didn't win. And we've seen it again. And see, the abortion issue was not a big deal to them. I'm going to tell you what the issue really is at the beginning of next hour. The abortion issue was not a big deal to them. Now look, here's the other thing. There are some things that, let me just say this. And I know black women are upset. I've seen some pieces online where some white woman called to arms to do some type of march. Those black women said, we're not having it. Because they feel betrayed. And to some extent they were. Because we thought that white women were going to be the key to get the first woman elected into office. And that just wasn't the case. Look at the numbers. You can't, 38% of Latino women, that's a big number. You can't let that slide either. So basically, black women were basically left out there on an island by themselves. Carrying this, black women have been the standard bearer on a lot of these things. A lot of these things. And they always come up short. Turn it back on black men. You see, if you understand history, and I told you I am a denizen of history, the women's suffrage movement, or the movement to equal rights, never really took off until after the 60s. Did y'all know that 70% of the women in the black 70% of the members of the Black Panther Party were women? Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that? Movement was strong, wasn't it? SNCC, SCLC. Women were involved in the movement. Black women. Okay? Black women. You go back and you look at our history. When we got things done together, that's when we moved forward. The culmination of that was the 64 Voting Rights Act. But they turned their back on you. And if you go back and you look at history, this feminist movement didn't take place until they got black women involved. Gloria Steinem and all of them wanted black women because they had looked at the history of how black women had helped move the fight for equality for black people along, and they said, hey, we need those women in our organization. So how can we get them in our organization? And first of all, we got to make them feel like that they are being treated bad by their men. that they are being underpaid when, in fact, many of them were making more money than their husbands because they were the ones who would be hired first before the husband would, the black male. It was all about trying to keep the black family down. So when black women joined the feminist movement, they further fractured our community. Girl, you don't need him. Go get on welfare. When the government became the daddy, our communities began to fall apart. I remember back in the day when you see something wild about a criminal on TV, you could sit calmly and say, I know that wasn't a black guy or a black person. Can't say that now. Now, I know you think I'm rambling, but my point being is that black women have been used by the feminist movement. And I'm going to be totally honest with you. It's time to come on back home. It really is. We got to rethink all of this, and later on in the show we're going to talk about in the segment what we must do. If you are as angry as you think you are, or as you say you are, then we should see a significant change in your modus operandi beginning like last Tuesday night. Because it's clear what's going on here. It's certainly clear to me, and I'm going to try to make it a little clearer to you next segment coming up here in just a few minutes at the top of the hour. I'm going to play a clip for you. I want you to hear it. I want you to understand why this is important. And then I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about white genetic annihilation. And I know you're going to think I'm a kook, but I'm not, because this has been bared out. We're going to read some articles to you. You can go and look at them for yourself. But the reason Kamala Harris, and I've delineated a couple of them this hour, you basically ignored male rights, or you basically ignored men, period. You weren't going to win anyway. And then, of course, the votes. How white women betrayed you. How Hispanic women betrayed you. It's amazing. You know, I've heard Hispanics who are already in America, they don't want other Hispanics to come over here. It's weird. Cubans who have gotten out of Cuba don't like Cubans coming over here. Now, they like the light-skinned Cubans. They don't want the dark-skinned Cubans. Okay? Y'all didn't know that, did you? So we're going to talk about all of that next hour. So I hope you'll stick and stay. Please don't go away. Don't forget the Black Friday sale is going on right now at ribrub.com. That's RIBBRUBB.com. You can get a gift box for $29.95. Okay? It's usually $45.95. In that box, you get 3 bags of rub, 3 bags of rib nuts. Okay? You also get rib juice, rib dust, pepper juice, and fry batter. And we'll ship it direct for you. Order early. We're going to sell out as we do every Christmas. I hope you'll check it out. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We've got to take the top of the hour break. When we come back, I'm going to give you the real reason why Kamala Harris lost. Okay? Something we've talked about before. We've got proof. We'll be back in a moment. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices on joynetradio.com.
Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Get great deals on rubs, sauces, snacks, and the best value. Coleman's Dynamic Gift Boxes pack with rib rubs, rib nuts, rib juice, pepper juice, rib dust, and fry dust. Get your choice of hot and spicy, original, and scorching flavors. Here's the secret. The gift box is the best value. Sign up for the Rib Rub Nation newsletter and get even more great discounts at ribrub@gmail.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That is ribrub.com. Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That's ribrub.com.
Hi, I'm David W. Coleman, host of Black Focus Radio and the Weekly Sports Magazine. We here at joinetradio.com would like to thank you for all the love and support you've given us. Our goal is to keep you inspired and informed daily with quality programming from gospel music, news, talk, and sports. Log on to joinetradio.com for the program lineup, and while there, be sure to make a donation. Then download our app and carry us anywhere in the world. Please continue to spread the word about joinetradio.com. And if you are an entrepreneur or have an upcoming event or you'd like to start a show, let the professional writers and producers here at joinetradio.com help you get the word out. Call me at 615-554-0568 for more details. In the meantime, stay informed and inspired daily right here on joinetradio.com.
Listen!
Did you miss Dr. Ernest Gill from UT San Antonio?
When you're making $455 million off these student athletes and all you can come up with is $5,000, John Calipari makes $8 million a year, and his players are going to get $5,000 a year. The majority of these teams were white men and white males and females. Would this be happening? And I would say no, because their families wouldn't let it happen. But we're letting our kids get pimped.
Join the Weekly Sports Magazine every Saturday, 8 to 10 a.m. on joinetradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed today on Black Focus Radio are not the views and opinions of the station, its management, or its advertisers. Now, let's get ready to focus on our issues, our solutions, using our voices on Black Focus Radio.
Welcome to Black Focus, the show designed with our community in mind, where we focus on our issues, developing our solutions, using our voices. Central Arkansas, surrounding areas, and the nation. Get ready. Black Focus starts right now. Phone lines open at 855-525-5683. So here's your host, David W. Coleman.
All right, welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. I'm Dave Coleman, host of the show. Appreciate everybody joining me. We've been on a little sabbatical, but we'll start getting more and more things together. We're still working on my little studio. We're going to do some green screening and all that stuff here coming up here real soon, so y'all stick and stay for that. We've been talking today about the aftermath of the election and how Donald Trump won. And I wanted to, and I talked a little bit last hour about, the ignoring of males in considering running for the election, of course, and the betrayal of Hispanic and white women as it relates to black women as part of the reason that Kamala Harris, her campaign was probably doomed from the beginning, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But there is still, in my opinion, an underlying reason why she lost and why black women and Hispanics betrayed the black community. Because that's what it basically was a betrayal. You see, Hispanics and white people, particularly Hispanics, they don't consider themselves black, even though they benefit from some of the fights that black people have done over the history of this country to fight for equal rights. They don't consider themselves black. So they don't necessarily ally with black people. And the numbers speak for themselves. I'm not just saying it. The exit polling speaks for itself. Okay? But this hour, I wanted to give you something that we've been talking about for a long time. And I'm going to let you hear this. Check, it's going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. It's not going to blow my mind. But just this, I'm setting this up. This is a TikTok that was someone sent to me. And look, I'm going to be totally honest. I can't authenticate that it's real, but it seems to be. And just based on what the conversation was about, it hits home on what I've been talking about for years. We're talking today about why Kamala Harris lost. We talked a little bit about how she basically ignored men, the abortion rights issue. Men cared about it, but, there was an aspect that was totally ignored. You were betrayed also by Hispanic and white women as well, so that was part of it. But there was an underlying issue that no one really talked about, and that's what we want to talk about this hour, okay? So I'm going to play a video, and we're going to talk a little bit about one of the people that I grew quite fond of and read a lot of her writings before she passed away. I think Dr. Frances Cress Welsing passed away in 2015, but she left with us a book that is so prophetic, and I'll tell you, we'll talk a little bit about her visit on Donahue when she first proffered this information, how the white people were so shocked at it, but there's a underlying reason when you look at the numbers, and that's why it was important for me to play those numbers or show you those numbers on what happened, okay? And what I want to do here in a moment, I want to play this piece by this interviewer who was talking to this white man about why he voted for Donald Trump. And they don't talk about it openly. And maybe that's why the question never was asked by some of the interviewers. But this race boiled down to race, period. And the reason many of these white folks voted for Donald Trump, look, that's why they could hold their nose. You got to hear this. Just listen to this.
I want to know how it is you voted for Donald Trump when you're so into facts, because his entire campaign is not based in facts. It was all based in propaganda and emotion.
I voted for Donald Trump for one reason only. His policies, if implemented, would slow the dispossession of whites in the United States. If you were to deport all illegal immigrants, if you were to think very hard about letting in any Muslims, all of this would slow the rate at which whites are becoming a minority.
Why are you so worried about the white dispossession of America?
Because I want my people to survive. Is that so strange? We don't control China. We don't control any place where whites are not a majority. And if we become a minority, we will not control our own destiny anymore.
I grew up in this country as a minority, as the children of immigrants. I was their first child born in America. And while I didn't have much possession or didn't much control, I really enjoyed myself. And I think that if you ask a lot of Americans, they would say that I had a lot to offer this country. According to you, I guess I would be perpetuating the dispossession of white America.
That is true. That is true.
Would you say that you wouldn't want me in this country?
At some point, when my ancestors built this nation, they did not build it with the intention of giving it away to Mexicans or Chinese or Haitians or to anyone else.
Do you consider, you keep saying your ancestors built this country, you consider that a fact?
Who else built it?
Black people, Native Americans, Chinese people who came and built the railroads.
Do you think none of that could have been
Italian people?
But they're European.
So there you have it. This guy's a white nationalist, and he's saying the quiet part out loud. Okay? The quiet part out loud. Now, what is that quiet part? I talked a little bit about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. We're gonna look. Let me read this article here. It says, this article is from Yes Magazine, and it's called "Race Against Time: How White Fear of Genetic Annihilation Fuels the Abortion Bans." Have you been listening to Black Focus Radio? Have we been talking about this? By the way, I want you to look at this picture. And I'm gonna go ahead and post this as well. And if you're looking at the show, I want you to look at this picture. Okay? You see, they knew long before we did. Now, this picture was published in 1858, as I remember correctly. And it was published by the Southern Chivalry. And the picture is a white man standing over a black baby. He has a gun in one hand and a knife in the other hand. And he says, quote, "If I hadn't killed you, you would have grown up to rule me." Hello? Now, you don't have to think, I don't want you to think that, oh, well, I'm some conspiracy theorist, because I'm not. I'm giving you fact here. That cartoon said a lot about, back in the 1850s, what white people knew about white genetic annihilation. They already knew it. Okay? If you remember, well, maybe you don't because you didn't study history, but those who did, one of the things that they liked to do to black men was cut off their genitalia. And quite often, white men, they would cut a black slave's genitalia off and put it in a jar and keep it in the root cellar. And when they would come over with their buddies and drink corn liquor, they would point to this, that, and the other about the size of that genitalia. Hello? In 1900, if you remember the movie Birth of a Nation, it was all about misogyny. Misogyny, I should say. It was all about Brutus black man pursuing white women. They did not want their white women breeding with black men. It was okay for their boys to do it because even today, they will tell you that you're not a man until you've had sex with a black woman. That's what white men even today tell their sons. I remember being in college and a white so-called friend of mine approached me and asked me to set him up with a black girl. And at first I thought it was legit. Come to find out, as I talked to him, he told me his dad, who was a prominent sheriff of one of those little towns outside of the college that I attended, had set him down and told him that he needs to have some black women on the side because he's not going to be a male or experience the sexual life that he needs to until he's had sex with a black woman. This is not an exaggeration. What is white genetic annihilation? Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, in her book, The ISIS Papers, talked a lot about that. Let's read this. Last year, and by the way, this particular article was published July 4th, 2019. Okay? Last year, white people constituted 60% of the United States population, down from 90% in the 1950s. It's projected by 2050 they will be the new minority and people of color will be the majority, a nightmarish prediction to some white people. Lindsey Graham, you've heard that name, right? He's a United States Senator. Lindsey Graham voiced his concerns of a demographic dilution at the 2012 Republican convention when he said the demographics race we're losing badly. Republicans are not generating enough angry white guys to stay in business for long term. Now let me stop right there for a moment, because we all know the negative things and the bad things Lindsey Graham said about Donald Trump until he was elected in 2016. We understand now why. We understand just based on that one little paragraph, it should become clear to you why so many of these white men have kowtowed to Donald Trump. It's clear. Okay? Graham's comments relay what social scientists and anti-racism activists call white extinction anxiety, or fear of white genetic annihilation. The idea that white people could go by the way of the dinosaur has been dismissed by some as simple pity and personal circumstance as conspiracy theory. But the convergent effects of new laws banning abortion together with old laws promoting mass incarceration of black and brown people suggests that this white fear is not just an idea, but the catalyst for public policy. Hello. There, indeed, appears to be a strong correlation between demographic projections, the fear of white genetic annihilation, and the recent wave of abortion bills. Anti-racism activist and diversity trainer Jane Elliott described it as a fear so great that white people, including political leaders, would do anything to see that it doesn't happen. Now let me stop right there for a moment. Because you say you love America so dear. America was built on its diversity. You heard that white supremacists try to proclaim that white people built America, when if it wasn't for free black labor, America would not be in the position it is in today. That free black labor where black people have never received one dime. Okay? Hello? You understand what I'm saying here? Let us continue. Hyper-punitive abortion legislation recently passed in Alabama bans the procedure outright except in cases of the risk of the woman's health, and in Georgia, a woman who obtains an abortion will spend the rest of her life in prison. Of 212 lawmakers in Alabama and Georgia, those whose votes ushered in the most restrictive abortion laws we've seen yet, 211 of them were white. No, bros and sos, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is not a conspiracy theory, okay? The late Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, psychiatrist and author of The ISIS Papers, The Keys to Color, and the Cress Theory on Color, Confrontation, and Racism, is well known for her theory of black and brown genetic dominance over the white recessive gene. People of color have the capacity to genetically annihilate white people, she explained, and unless white people control the reproduction of people of color, we can postulate that perhaps one day there won't be any white people. But Welsing was not the only one who held this belief. Her contemporary demographer, Ben Wattenberg, wrote in his book, The Birth Dearth, the main problem in the United States is the low number of white births. Wattenberg believed that white people, without a change of course, would lose the numerical majority in the U.S., and it would be no longer a white man's land. He proposed 3 ways to address this: pay women to have abortions, increase the number of immigrants, and prevent abortions. The first 2, he wrote, aren't the answer because they would also increase the number of black and brown babies. But the third, he posited, would solve the birth dearth problem by 60% of abortions are performed by white women. Hello, let me read that part to you again. But the third, now let me go back. He proposed 3 ways to solve the problem. Pay women to have babies, increase the number of immigrants, and prevent abortions. The third, he posited, would solve the birth dearth problem because 60% of abortions are performed by white women. The long-standing framework that once defined a woman's reproductive rights as essentially her own prerogative is being zealously deconstructed to effect an increase of white births over time. Not unlike illegal maneuverings that effectively made a person property under the American chattel slavery, these anti-abortion laws, to variable degrees, take ownership of a woman's reproductive rights, in essence, forcibly breeding white women to produce at higher rates. White patriarchal control over the lives of women, but especially women of color, isn't new, however. Since the nation was formed, white people have controlled the lives and reproduction of people of color. Hello? You see, I don't like to pat myself on the back, but as I told you, we've been talking about this for years. You see, let's go back to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. You know, a lot of comics who were trying to be, I guess, you know, in the woke wasn't the word back then, but they would use a portion of Dr. Welsing's book, or I guess you could say, a piece of the book, when she talked about games that white people have created, fascinating. You know, like, why are all the games that have brown balls are designed to clutch that ball? The more you hold on to it, you will likely win. The highest revenue generating sport, football, is one of those sports. Basketball is the other. You've got to read the ISIS papers. You've got to read it. It is so deep. The sister was deep, okay? One of the other things she talked about was the game of pool. And when I first read the book, it just blew me away. I had never thought about it. When you look at the game of pool, it starts off with 15 balls. And each one of those balls, in her theory, represents a nation. And in order to win that game of pool, the white ball is used to knock all the other balls off the table. And it comes down to a confrontation between the white ball and what? The 8 ball. And the 8 ball is what color? It's black. And in order for the person to win, he has to take the white ball and use it to knock the black ball off the table. But if you knock the white ball and the black ball off, or if the white ball goes off and the black ball doesn't, you lose. Comedians use that line, but unfortunately they never said where it came from. Now me, I had read the ISIS papers and I knew where it came from. Also, I had seen Dr. Frances Cress Welsing on Donahue, and I've looked for this video for years and I can't find it. I'd love to have it. If there's anyone out there who are listening to the show, if you all see it or hear it and you can get access to it, you really need to. She was on Donahue. Donahue was one of the early daytime talk shows. Great show, by the way. Had some hard-hitting guests on there. People like Farrakhan, Jesse Jackson. It ran the gamut. He was there to let you speak your mind. He also had white supremacists on there, KKK members. You know, all of those people. David Duke, they were on this show. The particular show that Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was on, there was a Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan. I can't remember. I remember him, he had on this black robe. And also Dr. Welsing and one other person. I don't recall. And Dr. Welsing, by the way, had been on his show a couple of times. And she certainly had riled people up. And people were upset because they were trying to call her a black racist because of some of the things that she was saying. And Dr. Welsing posited the theory of white genetic annihilation, something that Neely Fuller had been talking about previously as well. And she and Neely Fuller were pretty good friends from what I understand. White genetic annihilation. On that particular show, she told them about white genetic annihilation. And she said by 2042 that this country will be predominantly minority. Predominantly minority. Wow. That's mind-boggling. Okay? It really is. She said this, I believe it was 88, 89, somewhere in there. Tell you what, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this because, again, this is the underlying reason why Kamala Harris lost this election. Okay? And by the way, it started more so than any other time when Obama was elected in 2008. Back in a moment, it's Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices on JoyNetRadio.com.
Bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh yeah, at ReaRub.com. Coleman's Dynamic Pepper Juice is lighting fires around the country. It's the new product from ReaRub.com. Use it on meats and vegetables. Add it to your gumbos and greens for an extra punch. Made with all natural ingredients, Coleman's Dynamic Pepper Juice will enhance the flavors of your favorite recipes. Order today on ReaRub.com. And while there, be sure to check out some of our other great products. It's developed with love and care using the best all-natural ingredients with no GMOs or preservatives. From snacks to seasonings, Coleman's Dynamic Products has something for everyone. Bake it, grill it, smoke it. Oh yeah, at ReaRub.com.
Hey, beautiful. You look gorgeous. Are you doing something different? There's a healthy glow about you.
Thanks. I'm just my natural self.
Come on. What's your secret?
Okay. Since I found SkinTentional.com, I've been getting a lot of those comments.
SkinTentional.com
Yes, SkinTentional.com is handcrafted, luxurious natural baths and body care products. Crafted for those with a designer's taste for high-quality skincare products but won't break your bank. From body butter to oils and soaps, SkinTentional has something for everyone, including the man in your life. Get your man some beard balm and oils. And yes, they offer body butters and soap for him as well, without making him smell like flowers. Go to SkinTentional.com and check out their amazing products. They believe self-care should be an intentional and joyous experience for all. SkinTentional.com.
Pigskin, check. Round ball, check. Hard ball, check. Hockey puck, check. Burning rubber, check. We got it all on the weekly sports page with David Coleman. What else do you need? Did I say food? Can't have sports without food. What kind of show is this again?
A sports show.
Oh, okay. Pass me those rib nuts.
Yeah, we do have it all and a whole lot more with me, Dynamic David Coleman, on the weekly sports magazine.
Welcome back to the show, Black Focus Radio, our issues, our solutions, our voices. Don't forget, riprub.com, Black Friday sale is going on right now. Get some great deals on the Coleman's Dynamic Gift Boxes. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. When we left off, we were talking a little bit about the ISIS papers and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing and her appearance on Donahue. Now, I had already read the ISIS papers. I think I had read it twice. By the time I was a deep young brother. Okay. By the time I had read that, I had only read it once. And I had just recently read it because 87, I had just really began my mission quest to understand religion and whether I wanted to be Christian or Muslim or nothing. I ended up being nothing after reading the history of them both and Buddhism and all that stuff. So don't hate me, Christians. Don't hate me, Muslims. I respect what you do, but it ain't for me. But anyway, this is not about me. So I read, Dr. Welsing was on Donahue, and as I said, she was on there with a white nationalist, a KKK member, and she talked about white genetic annihilation. Okay? She talked about how in 2042 America would be majority minority. Okay? Now, she explained, and it upset a lot of those white people on that show. But here's the thing. Since I read about this theory, since I saw her on Donahue, it is yet to be debunked. Now, here's the baseline of the theory. The baseline of the theory that you have dominant and recessive genes. Would you agree with that? If you know basic biology, you can't dispute that. When it comes to everything that is a gene that is made up of DNA, there are dominant and recessive traits. We as individuals have dominant and recessive traits. And it plays out in how we are, how we act, how we look. People who can run fast has a dominant trait of being able to run fast. What all of that DNA that contributes to that. Usain Bolt. People who can jump higher. People who are taller, who are skinnier, who have bigger breasts, smaller butts. All of that is dominant recessive type genealogy. Now, I'm not trying to give you a biology lesson. Some people can smoke, never get cancer. People that live next door to them because the smoke is seeping into their apartment will get cancer from secondhand smoke. Some genes are different. DNA is different. You also have a dominant and recessive gene when it comes to color. Melanin. That's a gene that determines whether you're light-skinned, white, or black as the night. And that dominant gene is the black gene. When you say, oh, well, Dave, how can you say that? Well, look at the world. 3/4 of the world are people of color. They are descendants of Eve. Eve's mitochondrial DNA that was found in Africa. That's why the argument of whether or not Jesus was white should have never been an argument if you simply knew genealogy. There's no way he could have been white. But that's another story for another day. You can take that up with your minister. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was saying that the dominant gene is the black gene. And if we know anything about biology, dominance wins out over time. It does. Survival of the fittest. It's the law of nature. The big tree that grows faster lasts longer than the smaller tree that dies off. Homo sapiens are the top of the food chain, so to speak. So that's why we have dominated all of the other animals around the world to some extent. But something as simple as color, melanin. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was clear that by the 2040s, America will be majority minority, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. That article that I just read, written in 2019, if it was 2019, she was on Donahue in 1990. That was almost 50 years ago. Whew. They are just now beginning to say what their concern is out loud. Okay? So, here we are today. And all of this goes back to the election. You heard that white supremacist, that piece that I played earlier. You heard him say it. Saw it in the article. You heard even a U.S. senator talking about it. You think they don't talk about this behind closed doors? Yes, they do. More so than ever, they don't want their little black boys and white boys and white girls having any sexual contact with black people or people of color. They don't want that. And even the ones that you say are your friends are the very ones who are behind your backs talking about this. They are the very ones, those white women who betrayed black women on Tuesday by going into the voters booth and voting for a man who has no business being president, and betraying black women. And black women, I'm sorry, your feelings are hurt. See, this is the one thing that they didn't talk about. It's white genetic annihilation. It's real. It's not a theory. It's not some type of conspiracy theory. It is happening. You heard the numbers right there. In 1950, 90% of the people in America were white. It's down to 60 by 2019. By 2042, they will be majority minority. That says 2050. Hey, I'll give you 8 years, whatever the case may be, it's happening. And the only way that they can stop it is abortion, stopping abortion. See, this has nothing to do with some holy march to save God's children. It has everything to do with white supremacy. Because guess what? This country was built on white supremacy. You heard that white supremacists talk about, well, our people built this country. No, your people didn't. Your people sat on their asses and enslaved other people to build this country, and you made the money off of it. That's why Kamala Harris lost. And I've purposely, since the election, not even tried to listen to any of the pundits because they're not going to talk about this. And I knew on today's show that I wanted to make sure that I made it clear. I talked about some of the other potential things, but this was the underlying thing. And we've talked about this abortion issue for a long time now on this show. I asked you to continue to listen to Black Focus Radio because we give you the unvarnished truth. Can you really blame white people want to preserve their people? I guess you can't. But the policies that they institute is having a deleterious effect on people of color. You see, this thing with this, what really brought it into focus was 2008. 2008, Barack Obama was elected. And white people lost their minds. I remember seeing interviews of white men saying if Obama's ever elected, over their dead bodies. I don't know if they're dead today, but then he got reelected. Hurt him. Remember when he was elected in 2008, what happened? The Tea Party was formed. And the Tea Party was formed as a means to try to make sure that another black person will never be elected in this country as president. Oh, the media tried to make it out to be something, it was innocent people thinking that their government had betrayed them, yada, yada, yada. No, the Tea Party was initially a racist movement. And out of the racist movement, we have what we have today. And behind closed doors, they've been talking about white genetic annihilation. The proof of that is Lindsey Graham. He's a United States Senator. This is why they're so behind Donald Trump, is that the only way that they figured that they can, remember it was Donald Trump who asked in his first stint in the office, basically said, why can't we import people from Scandinavia and Norway and places like that? Well, because those people are predominantly white. I wouldn't be surprised that his dalliance with Vladimir Putin has everything to do with white supremacy. I wouldn't be surprised. It was decades before the United States finally decided to stop supporting the South African government who was committing apartheid to the indigenous people of that land. By the way, the Afrikaner government was white. Many argue, historians argue, particularly the ones of color, why didn't they drop the atom bomb on Europe as opposed to Japan? Hitler was just as evil. Why didn't they drop it on Europe, Germany? Many people back then suggested the reason that they didn't was because those people were European. They spoke differently, but they looked like them. The Japanese did not. Japanese internment camps. I can go down a list of atrocities that this country has committed against people of color. And when you look at it, we keep coming. And that's what disturbs them. And what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was saying, think about this, man. The one thing I've done over my lifetime, and I'm 63 years old, is I've read a lot of history. And the one thing that I know that I continue to be amazed about with black people is that we keep coming. Think about it. Over 200 years of slavery, Well, 300 if you consider the European slave trade as well, who started it all with the Portuguese. All of that slavery, the rape, the incest, the beatings, the castrations, the murders. I saw a piece where Crispus Attucks was, his skin was used. It's crazy. I didn't know that. You know, Crispus Attucks was considered the first person to die in the American Revolution, and I didn't know that they had taken his body and skinned him and made books about it. And that book is right now on display in some London reservatory. I didn't know that. Of all the things that we went through, we keep coming. So, yeah, this abortion thing is real. 2042 is real. White genetic annihilation is real. And what they talk about behind closed doors, we don't talk about. We talk about P. Diddy. Who's sleeping with who? Who's hating on who? Who made the next diss record? I warn y'all. I will tell you that over the next few shows, we're going to go through this Project 2025. Be aware that at the end of the day, I'm not marching. I said that early in the show. Because there are going to be a lot of black folks that's going to be killed. Because they're going to give them acquired immunity. They won't be able to be tried. Hello? You all have everything. Y'all have every right to be upset. But you brought it on yourselves. You didn't go out to vote. You were too busy worrying about other things other than things that were important. Your health care is going to go away. I will tell you that. If you don't know it already, it's going to go away. All of those things that you thought that were your rights and privileges are going to go away. Okay? It's by design. One of the other things that Dr. Welsing said, and I posted this on my wall, white supremacy is telling our men and women to hate each other as well as themselves. At this rate, very soon, our women will be teaching their girls to hate black men, and our men will be wearing dresses. Dr. Welsing talked about that over 20 years ago. And look what's happening. This is some real stuff, folks. But see, y'all don't read. Y'all don't pay attention. Y'all don't care. And that's the sad thing about it, is that this stuff is happening right under our noses. And we're not doing a darn thing about it. That's what's so sad about this. It's happening right under our noses, and we're not doing a darn thing about it. Maybe we deserve this. Coming up here in a little bit after the break, we're going to talk about what we must do. You know, I put that segment in the show purposely because I wanted people to understand what we must do in order to be successful, not as a nation, but simply as a community. Okay? But as I go to break, I want to read this to you. And I've gotten a lot of responses from this, and this is something that I didn't write, but I thought it was so profound when I saw it. So I wanted to read it, and I posted it to my wall. America died today. Hope died today. Freedom died today. Ethics died today. Morality died today. Love died today. Cause of death: ignorance, racism, hate, and greed. Maybe we deserve it, but prepare for the biggest "I told you so" in history. We gotta take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Wrap up the show with What We Must Do. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. On JoyNetRadio.com.
Black Friday has already started at RibRub.com. Get great deals on rubs, sauces, snacks, and the best value. Coleman's Dynamic Gift Boxes packed with rib rubs, rib nuts, rib juice, pepper juice, rib dust, and fry dust. Get your choice of hot and spicy, original, and scorching flavors. Here's the secret. The gift box is the best value. Sign up for the Rib Rub Nation newsletter and get even more great discounts at ribrub@gmail.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That is RIBBRUBB.com. Black Friday has already started at ribrub.com. Avoid the holiday rush and order today at ribrub.com. That's ribrub.com.
Welcome back to Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices. David W. Coleman here, your host. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, noon to 2 p.m. on JoyNetRadio.com. Hit us up on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Well, not Twitter. There's a lot of women who have closed their Twitter accounts. I closed mine a long time ago. I don't even use it anymore. But anyway, be sure to check out ribrub.com and make sure that you are participating in the Black Friday sale that is going on right now. We've been talking this whole show about why Kamala lost, and all of it boils down to white genetic annihilation. You know, I threw in some other things in there just for happenstance, but it really boils down to white genetic annihilation. And this segment is called What We Must Do, and I always like to try and give people hope that we can change our situation if we're willing to change it. It's right now, I don't think black people are willing to change it. If some of these policies go into effect, then you're not going to have a choice. Remember, I'm the guy who's been telling you that you should have your kids to boycott these universities. That would change stuff overnight. They sure like for us to be running them footballs, don't they, Massa? Massa, I just done throwed a long ball. It's called a bomb. They love that. Woo, look at that boy right there. He sure can run. What would happen if we stopped? If our children stopped playing for them and we demanded rights? See, they've taught you and they've told you that you don't have any rights. Okay? That you don't. They've conditioned you so badly. And here's another great quote. First they fascinate the fools, then they muzzle the intelligent. They fascinated the fools. You all are the fools. And they are muzzling the intelligent people who are trying to give you information, because they're flooding you with information that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Because you won't listen to people like me and Black Focus Radio. You'll listen to them because they're flooding you with this stupidity. So one of the things that we must do is that we got to continue, and more so than ever, we've got to support legitimate black media that is going to give us the straight dope. And when I say the straight dope, I mean the stuff that don't make you feel good, but you know they right. Okay? You know they right. The crowd chose Barabbas, But not because they loved him, but because they hated the truth. Hello? See, you all have chosen Barabbas. You all are listening to all of this other stuff, but you hated the truth. And the truth is what's going to set us free. But y'all don't understand that yet. Y'all don't understand that yet. And they're running circles around us. They're playing three-dimensional chess, and you all haven't even set up your checkerboard yet. You hadn't even gotten it out the box. So we've got to start supporting black-owned media more so than ever before. More importantly, black women and black men, y'all got to come together. And I ain't talking about trying to get booty. I'm talking about on a movement. I said earlier in the show, 70% of the people in the Black Panthers were women. You look at the movement. Without the movement, there are no black women. But you know what? There are without the black women, there is no movement. And yeah, without the black men, there is no movement. All we got. I've said this for years, that we came over here not sitting on the deck of the boats, but in the galleys, strapped head to toe, laying in each other's urine and feces and regurgitations, dying for one another, being thrown overboard. There are just as many women at the bottom of the Atlantic as there are black men. We are tied together at the hip. And we've got to make a decision. Is that either we're going to fight and continue to fight together, or we're going to perish without a whimper. And lastly, more so than anything else, we must begin to make sure that we are keeping our resources in our communities. Over the last few weeks, I've met a lot of brothers and sisters who said, oh yeah, I've heard about your business. I want to support your business. Well, let's see if you do so. Let's see. I don't want any lip service. I want action. We need action. We have to empower our people. And in order to do that, we need money. And we got to demand that those people who have money, black people, are spending it where it needs to be spent. Many of these black athletes and entertainers, they get up there and they start making money, and they're donating to all of these white charities. Very little of that money comes back to the black community. We've got to start putting eyes on our dollars. That's really the bottom line. And more importantly, since the schools are not going to teach you history, since the schools are going to tell you that the history of white people was lily white and they loved all white people, all black people, and there were no slaves, they were indentured servants, then we've got to start teaching our histories in black churches and black synagogues. We cannot allow our children to grow up in the ignorance of white supremacy. Hello? That's what we must do. And if you want this to continue, then continue to deal in stuff like who's sleeping with who. What kind of hair is she wearing? We are the only community where they can move into our community and become millionaires, and we live in the community and we live in poverty. I'm saying this as a business owner. If I got 10%, 5% of the black community to buy my product, I could be rich. And then I could hire other black people and teach them not just about the spice business, but how to become a legitimate business person, a mentor, all of those things that come into play with that. But you won't buy. You want to save the community? Because right now, as it looks right now, you're going to have to do it. Government ain't going to do it anymore. You'll learn more about that when we talk about 2025. All right. We've got to go, but I hope you enjoyed the show. We're glad to be back. We'll be doing more. We're going to be doing some green screening and all of that stuff here coming up as well. But I appreciate all the support that you've been giving me, and I hope you'll continue. And don't forget about the Black Friday sale that is going on right now on ribrub.com. Or you can go out to YouTube and click all those links, and there will be some discounts for you. From this point on, every commercial that I post will have links for discounts. All you got to do is click them. Okay? Support black businesses. This is the only way that we can save ourselves. I've got to go, but just remember, no one can save us, from us, for us, but us. Appreciate you listening. It's called Black Focus Radio. Our issues, our solutions, our voices on JournetRadio.com.
You've been listening to Black Focus, where we discuss our issues with our solutions and our voices. Join us every weekday afternoon at 1 p.m. on JournetRadio.com.